9th of October 2017. My name is Christine Kaya. This is Y254 News. Now, with just 16 days to the repeat presidential elections, a lot of people are eager to see exactly what is going to happen after the 26th of October. There's an election bill on the table. There's the opposition asking for reforms, and there's demonstrations being carried each and every single day. Now, tonight we are going to be discussing matters surrounding that particular issue with my panelists. Do join us much later on for that discussion. You can also comment and send in your suggestions and your question to 22162, beginning with the word news. And you can find us on Twitter and Facebook at Y254 channel. The hashtag is Y254 updates. But for now, let's have a look at some of the stories that are making headlines this evening. Now, parts of the countries have witnessed demonstrations as a section of Kenyans heed the call by the National Super Alliance to hold protests to push for reforms at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission.
With only 2 weeks to the repeat presidential elections, running battles, closed business outlets, detailed security and tension has characterized most of the towns and cities in the country. In what started as peaceful procession by the NASA supporters has ended up being a running battle with police and a group of persons claiming to be protecting their business interests, patrolling with police ensuring the two factions do not clash. But even as NASA supporters were exercising their democratic right to picket, business operators in Nairobi want the political clans to bring down the boiling political temperatures and allow other Kenyans earn their daily bread. The NASA brigade has maintained that there will be no elections if their demands are not met. They wanted the removal of IEBC CEO Ezra Chiloba and other commissioners, among other reforms. For Y254 News, my name is Dereva Hillary.
Now, the Jubilee Party were at the coast over the weekend in a bid to seek to solidify their votes and secure Uhuru's re-election. The move saw them receive opposition team defectors as well as garner support from the county's local leaders in order to secure a win for the party this time round. Hilda Wathithi with that story.
Takbir wa Islam!
While speaking to the crowd in Mombasa, President Kenyatta said that the Jubilee Party will continue to focus on development and nurturing more youth to ascend to power. However, the Deputy President, Honorable William Ruto, went ahead to fault Odinga for attempting to sabotage the October 26th poll, saying his scheme will not work. During the rallies, a few NASA defectors were received by the Jubilee Party, among them former Taita Taveta Governor John Murutu and former Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar. Former Mombasa gubernatorial contender Suleiman Shagbal, who spoke ahead of President Kenyatta's visit, said that the local leaders will continue to work towards enhancing Jubilee vote basket. The visit saw the duo expected to issue title deeds to local institutions, including public schools and a mosque. Cabinet Secretary Najib Balala described their tour as a great victory for the coastal people and ensuring locals regain control of their land. Dereva Hillary for Y254 News.
Now, the High Court has cleared Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chairman Wafula Chebukati and CEO Ezra Chiloba to conduct October 26 repeat election. The court has noted that the two were not found culpable by the Supreme Court.
These commissioners and Mr. Chiloba will be free to conduct the 26th October presidential elections. That is what this court has decided. Whether Parliament makes changes the law or not, as it is now, this court has clarified the Supreme Court ruling, and it has said that Chiloba, Chebukati, and the current commissioners shall conduct the presidential elections come 26th, and that is it.
This comes after three voters, Brian Asin, Ben Wanakasami and Calvin Amwanga, filed a suit with the High Court wanting the court to issue a conservatory order against Chebukati and Chiloba, restraining them from supervising presidential elections. The case under certificate of urgency has the chairman Wafula Chebukati being the first respondent among 9 others. All the 6 commissioners, the Chief Executive Officer, CEO, and Attorney General Githu Muigai were also included in the suit. The petitioners had argued that the commissioners and CEO Ezra Chiloba, a public officer at IEBC, therefore should have delivered credible polls as they raise integrity questions. To that effect, NASA has been staging twice a week demos from which, from Monday, October 9th, have been ratcheted up to this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A series of meetings featuring the IABC, Jubilee, and NASA presidential candidates. All their agents have not yielded any compromise, throwing the poll into uncertainty.
Right. The challenge faced by TSC over the retirement age of teachers emanates from a directive from 2009 from the government changing the retirement age from 55 to 60. Following the directive, some teachers worked until they attained the age of 60 years, yet they were not eligible due to system errors. This prompted some of those affected to contest the calculation of their pension claims up to the age of 55.
While arguing the case before the Labour Court, TSC explained that before 2007 it didn't have its own payroll and therefore was using the government information technology systems, which contained many errors in regard to the information of teachers, like the dates of birth and the dates of appointment. However, after 2007, the Commission started cleaning the government information technology system in order to obtain an error-free system to be used for the integrated payroll personal data system, which had been acquired in the year 2006. Mr. George Kuria, who went sued TSC, was supposed to have retired on September 1st, 2008, having attained 55 years of age. However, on March 20th, 2009, TSC, among other government entities, received a circular from the Secretary to the Cabinet and Head of Public Service directing that with the effect from April 1st, 2009, all public servants would retire upon attaining 60 years. The circular further directed public servants who had not attained 55 years as at March 5th, 2009, to continue to serve till they attained 60 years if they wished. Reporting for Y254 News, my name is Patricia Morioki.
Right, so it's about that time we have our discussion and we are talking matters elections 26th of October, whereby we are asking a number of questions. Is the IEBC ready? Will the bill on the table be affecting the elections? And we want to know, you as the young people out there, are you really knowledgeable and informed about the elections laws and matters concerning that? So right now with me in studio, I'm joined by a lady and a gentleman who will introduce themselves. I will give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves, but then we also want to ask you to join in our discussion tonight by sending in your SMSs through 22162, of course beginning with the word news, and you can find us on Twitter at Y254 channel. The hashtag is Y254 updates. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to first of all introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you guys do. We can start with Patricia.
Okay, my name is Patricia Morioki. I'm a student and I'm a journalist, and that is basically what I'm doing right now.
All right, thank you so much, Patricia.
And my name is Senaji Anyanje, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and I'm glad to be here today.
All right, thank you so much, guys, for making time to join us tonight. I want to obviously get right into it. The slogan that we've been hearing all through: no reforms and no elections. I want to ask, what is it that the opposition knows that Jubilee doesn't know? That's why they are so sure that no reforms and no elections. We could start with you.
Yes, thank you very much, Christine. I think that narrative has been going on for quite a while now. As you might have known, during the presidential petition, the NASA Super Coalition was talking about many secret weapons in the Constitution. Yes. Now, by saying that no elections, no reforms, they have been mooted that what they mean is that there will be a boycott of the election. We have even seen Parliament going to the extent of providing for withdrawal and declaration in the event that a candidate actually intimates that they will not participate in the election. But when you look at Article 138, for example, which provides for the procedure of election of the president, it actually stipulates that the election shall be conducted in each of the constituencies. Now, if you have 291 constituencies under the constitution, it actually means that one might want to interpret it to mean that the National Super Alliance might actually convince its supporters not to turn out on that election date. And what that will mean is that in the event that even one constituency, be it the diaspora, fails to vote, that actually means that that election will not have met the constitutional threshold of being held in each and every constituency. And as such, even if that matter was taken to court, it will actually be deemed that the election did not meet the constitutional threshold.
Right. Before I come to you, Patricia, however, though, I would tend to think that under no circumstances would there be zero votes, because even in the past election you'd find either side having like even 1%, 2%. So really, would we get to a situation whereby a constituency there would be no votes?
Now, what I think happens here is that it will go now down to the convincing power of the people intending to boycott the elections. Now, whatever means they intend to use to make sure that there is no election might be something that they've not actually revealed to us.
Okay.
But looking at the constitution, that might be the most probable option that they intend to pursue.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. Patricia, what is your view on this? Do you think there's something that NASA knows that Jubilee doesn't know? That's why they are so sure that there will be no elections.
Okay, what I would say is that I really don't think that there's something that NASA knows that Jubilee does not know. It's all based in the things that NASA want met before they go to the ballot on the 26th of October, of which we've seen that most part of it is the no Chiloba, no Chebukati, of which I feel that since these two people have been cleared by the High Court, then what is it that are they going to use to have the election not to be done or to be carried out on the 26th of October, unless if the same way Sena just said, unless if they have other means or they have other reasons that they have not put out there for us to know as citizens of the country.
Right. And you know, still talking about no reforms, no elections. These reforms they're talking about, considering the Constitution stipulates clearly that within 60 days there should be held another election. Is it possible? Are these reforms achievable? Can they be done before the 60 days?
Okay, the success of this process will have been actually very simple if all the parties had the goodwill to make sure that these reforms are actually implemented. I think the yardstick as set out in the Raila Odinga petition actually stipulates that the systemic and systematic malpractices, irregularities and illegalities that are actually effected during that election period, which NASA seek to have addressed through their irreducible minimums. But then again, you have this other party, this other side come with the amendments to the law. You will actually find out when you go through these two proposals, you'll actually find that the IBC is left in a quagmire because one party wants this to be done, the other party wants this other thing to be done. And look at the amendments, you'll actually find that most of the irregularities that were actually cited in the Supreme Court ruling are what these amendments seek to cure. Yeah.
Yes.
Then, on the other hand, if you look at the reducible minimums, what these things stipulate is that the shortcomings that were actually occasioned during the previous elections are what NASA seek to have sealed before the repeat process. Yes.
Right. But so the question then is, so which one has weight? We all know the answer to that, but which one has the weight? The demands or the Constitution?
At this point in time, the Constitution will prevail because it is being the supreme law. It actually means that whatever legislative crafts that come out of any process must actually adhere to this Constitution. But then you find that there is the part of the amendment which most observers have actually termed as ill-timed. Yeah. Then we have the irreducible minimum. Now, you see, in such a situation, the best solution will have been a political solution where the parties come, sit down, and agree to as to the reforms that they seek to pursue. But we're having this both camps taking hardline positions and thus making us look at what we actually deem as a looming constitutional crisis. Yes.
Right. So then interpretation, because I feel like it's been quite a challenge. You know, people have interpreted the ruling of the Supreme Court, you know, in their own ways. There's different understandings of what the Supreme Court means, and there's also a different understanding of what it means when you talk about sovereignty of the Kenyan people. Where do you think has gone wrong in this interpretation by various people, various parties and various people?
Okay, I'll say that it is the knowledge that you have as a citizen or as a person, because whatever the Supreme Court, the judgment of the Supreme Court was very clear. They did not find either the first respondent, the second or the third guilty, or they did not charge them with any crime. So I feel the way that you take that judgment and then put it and decide to whatever perception that you have in your mind, that is what is going to determine how do I react towards all these things that are really happening right now in the country. So I say it comes back to the person, the understanding that you have, the knowledge that you have too, because if you hear of something, you don't go making decisions before you get to know what is really happening. It's up to you to get into your constitution, to get to understand your constitution, so that you know that even as I react, I'm reacting because I have something that can support my reactions. So you not just go to the streets, you're not just start saying things because you don't have support or you don't have something that is really going to be as a support of your statements.
Right. Briefly, because from an advocate's point of view, or rather actually not even from point of view, factual, very briefly, what was the ruling? What did the ruling state?
Okay. When you look at the ruling by the Supreme Court, you will actually realize that it actually flowed from the petition. Somebody having gone through the petition will actually understand where this case originated from. What the petition was talking about is that the constitutional threshold as stipulated for a free, fair, transparent, accurate, verifiable process is what was not met. That threshold was not met. Through the evidence that was presented in court, whether that evidence was sufficient or not, that now becomes a moot question because the decision was already rendered. But going through the decision, we'll actually find that having ruled in favor of the petitioners, we'll actually find that the court actually agreed that the constitutional threshold of a free, fair, credible, transparent, and accountable election was not met. And consequently, the Supreme Court was left with no option but to declare the election as null and void. Yes.
Right. So now, moving on, October 26th is the date. A situation whereby one candidate will show up, one candidate will not show up. What happens?
I will want to know what they mean by showing up, but we'll actually realize that going to these elections, we'll actually find that both the presidential candidates will be on the ballot papers. Whether the Third Way Alliance candidate will be there is still a matter in court. We await the decision on Wednesday. But looking at the Constitution, a person can only be declared president if only one person is nominated to run for the office of the president. And that is stipulated under Article 137 of the Constitution. Now, what this amendment has sought to do is to actually make provision for a situation whereby the commission, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, can actually declare somebody president in the event that a person who was previously on the run declares to withdraw from that race. And that withdrawal can only be effected through a notice to the commissioner intimating that intention. But in the absence of that, I remain to wonder how not showing up will actually be effected, bearing in mind that we anticipate that the election materials have already been printed out, and what is left now is for the process to kick off.
Okay, so at what particular point is the president, the sitting president, supposed to vacate the office if he or she is not the one who's been elected back? And at what particular point then do you say that there's vacuum?
Okay, what the law stipulates, there are two answers to that under the Constitution. One is anchored under Article 142, which actually provides for the period of temporary incumbency, which basically runs from the period from which the first presidential ballot is cast until the time when the next president assumes office. That is a period of temporary incumbency, which we are currently under. Now, the other stipulation is under Article 146, which actually provides for the vacancy in the office of the president. And this occurs in a number of scenarios. Number one, you find it under Article 144 and 145, which provide for incapacitation of the president or in the event that the president is impeached through a legislative process, which we don't foresee at this point in time. Then the other scenario is if there's any other reason under the Constitution that actually renders it impossible for that office to function. Now, looking at the looming situation, do we do we foresee a period of a vacancy?
Yes.
Now,
especially more so after 26, in case the opposition say that they refuse the elections and they say the results is still not fair, you know.
This is what is going to happen in the event that that election does not take place. Even after 26, they still have 5 more days to the first deadline, 1st November deadline. But in the event that no election is held, now the Constitution under 142 stipulates that the period of temporary incumbency shall run from the date of the first presidential ballot to the time when the next person assumes office. Now, the only time that a person can assume office is when an election is held. Now, we have this problem of the 60-day period. Now, what happens in the event that the 60-day period is not met? Now, under 146 2, it actually provides that the deputy president can actually assume office. But by virtue of the fact that we don't have an election, we assume that there is no deputy president at this point in time. And that after that, under 146 2, we find 2B, that is, the Speaker of the National Assembly actually assumes office and will have to, and then the country will have to conduct elections within 60 days.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I just want to remind our viewers that remember our SMS line is 22162, beginning with the word news. You can find us on Twitter at Y254 channel. The hashtag is Y254 updates. Do send in your comments and your questions and suggestions, and we will be able to get back to you. So, I mean, do you think that the IEBC is ready to conduct this second election, Patricia?
Yes, I would say I think they are ready to conduct the election because they have been preparing themselves, and with all these unrest that has been happening, with all the accusation that has been made, I can say that they have stayed strong. I can say that there are people who have really committed themselves to make sure that the mistakes that were made in the election are not going to be repeated. So I'll say that the IEBC is ready for the 26th election.
Right. There is a bill on the table right now. How does that affect the IEBC conducting the elections?
I think, Christine, the tragedy that is actually befalling IEBC at the moment is the strong positions taken by each camp that this has to be done before we actually effect this.
Yes.
Now, whether that means that IEBC is ready is yet to be seen, because even based on what is before them, you have amendments on this end and you have the reducible minimum on this end. Now, if you look at the timeline that is left based on the period, it might actually be impossible to implement some of these reducible minimum.
Yes.
As for the amendments, we can actually foresee that by the end of next week, probably they'll be enforced. And what the bill has actually contemplated is that under Article 116 of the Constitution, it will come into effect immediately upon gazettement. So what other parties have actually talked about is that the Supreme Court decision talked of conducting fresh presidential polls in strict compliance with the existing, the term existing. But if you look at the ruling itself, it does not use the term existing, but it actually talks to according to the applicable laws. Now, if this law is amended by next week, if the amendments are effected, it will actually mean that this law actually becomes applicable. And that will present another quagmire for the IEBC, because looking at the raft of amendments that have been proposed, some of the things that actually form the basis of the petition are what have been tackled in that proposed amendment. Yes, soon to be law.
Right. I mean, some of the amendments, you know, like particularly I would look at the one that equalizes the manual system and the electronic system. How will that really work, and how will it affect?
Okay, looking at the history of this country, especially the electioneering history, we'll actually appreciate the fact that part of these reforms are contained in the current Act number 24 of 2011. Actually came into place after the recommendations by the Kriegler Commission on the reforms that have to be made on the Electoral Commission, so that we avoid the repeat of what happened in 2007. But looking at the proposed amendments, we'll actually find that the manual system has actually been given more weight compared to the electronic system. It is actually tragic that in the 21st century, we will actually be looking at going back manual when there are other easier means, especially electronic, which could actually make an easier process. Now, what the amendments seek to propose, especially under amendment to section 39 and 44, is that in the event that there's there's an inconsistency between the manual and electronic, the manual system will actually prevail. What they also say in that amendment is that the commission shall maintain a public portal upon which they'll be relaying results, but those results shall not form the basis of the final declaration. And even they go further to state that in the event that there's any discrepancy in those figures as presented to the portal, that shall not be a basis for nullification of the presidential election. As we'll appreciate during the presidential petition, part of the decision was hinged on the public portal and the statistics, as they call it at that time. Yes.
All right. Well, I was quite interested in that particular bit, how you can be able to just equalize the manual, but thanks for shedding light on that. Now, as you would see, I mean, even as of today, actually, I was watching a clip, and while some of our reporters were out in the field, there was a car that came and ran a few of the protesters right over there at GPU. The young people are really, really getting caught in the middle of this. Say, what would you maybe advise the young people, you know, regarding, are they being, first of all, are they being used? Do you feel like young people are being used by political, I would say, bigwigs?
Okay, I'll say that at some point they're being used, and at some point it's a person making the decision to be in or to be on the streets, because you find that most of the young people, we really don't have the knowledge, we really don't have the information of really what is transpiring. You don't have the information, you're not equipped on what does your constitution say, because when you talk of peaceful demonstrations, the constitution clear, I'm sure a peaceful demonstration does not mean that you block the roads, because the moment you do that, the police must intervene. And so I can say that the youths are being used, but it's up to me as a young person, it's up to you as a young person to get to know when should I go out there and support this dean, and what ways am I supposed to do, or what things am I supposed to do as I demonstrate. Yeah.
Do you think the young people really understand what they're fighting for? When they're going out there to fight, to demonstrate rather, do you think they really understand exactly what they're demonstrating about?
I will tend to believe that looking at whatever is happening currently, there are certain clusters of people that fall within the category of fighting for whatever they perceive to be right. On one end, you will find we have the business community representing a certain interest. On the other end, you find that we have this crop of youth thinking that by going to the street, the anti-IEBC protests is actually the way to resolve issues. Now, where that leaves us is a situation whereby we have different political interests being advanced by different categories of people. Now, whether they understand whether if what they do is actually from an informed point of view is something that we cannot actually accurately predict now, because based on the fact that you will actually find that there are people who actually do these things for different reasons. Probably some people want to be seen there as fighting for a certain cause. Others want to be there, for example, to show their support for the parties they support, for example. But ultimately, we take human beings as people who are rational and having free will. And by such, you mean that these are people who are able to make a decision and actually determine whether whatever they are doing is right or wrong. But if they participate in a democratic process, what we'll expect of the law is to ensure that these people are adequately protected. But by taking advantage of this protest and making probably a move like what happened today on TV when that car came and ran over those people, that is not right. Probably that person might have acted out of apprehension that these people might actually cause some harm to them. But again, if you see such a thing, the best to do is just to avoid that area, but not run over people just in the hope that you think that these people are doing the wrong thing. So it might be wrong to you, but it actually might be right to them. Yeah, and especially if it is a right guaranteed under the Constitution, unless and until that point that you're actually infringing on another person's enjoyment of any particular right, every person has an equal opportunity and protection of the law. Yes. Right.
So as we finish up, as we wind up, just maybe your word of advice to the young people as we head towards 26th of August. Just a parting shot, what you'd like to tell them.
Okay, what I would like to say to the young people is that it is good for us to be informed. It is good for us to take part in everything that happens in our country, whether politically. But what I would say is that let us all have understanding of our constitution. Let us all understand, and before we go to the streets and do the demonstrations, before we make any decisions, let us first think of the consequences that we are going to have after that. Because what I feel is that most of us wait to be told things and then go and do them without taking that time to want to know what am I getting myself into. So please make sure that you listen very well, you get to understand what is being said. Sometimes don't just listen to people, but listen and also take time as a person individually to want to know what has this person said, and if I do it or if I follow it, what is going to happen to me as a young person.
Right. Sanaji.
Thank you. I think at this point in time, as the youth, we have a very big obligation and duty to actually ensure that whatever happens, we remain sane in all these happenings currently. Now, in the wake of these challenges, you will actually anticipate or expect that some degree of sanity prevails. Now, my advice to the youth of this country will be that at this point in time, we have to stand at the voice of reason. Let us not get carried away by political inclinations to the point that our country will go to doom just on the basis of us not playing our role. I think there are other positive ways and methods that we can actually use to contribute positively to whatever processes might be looming before us. And even so, we still have that positive obligation to posterity, because ultimately we'll be judged based on how we contribute to whatever circumstances befall us as a country.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in and taking your time to talk with us. I will just read some of the SMSs because people are very impressed with our discussion today. And someone here, number ends with 5250710, says Sanaji was born with the Constitution. That's a bright mind. Kenya needs that. I now understand where the country is at now. Someone else says, young brilliant minds, Senaji Anyanje. That's 0797 ending with 879. And someone else says that you are an eye-opener for us Kenyan citizens on the Constitution, and kudos to you, both of you. That's 0797879. We thank you so much for your feedback and for keeping it Y254 news. We've come to the end of our news tonight. However, let's meet tomorrow for Business Tuesdays. But up next, we have Y Mashariki. Do stay tuned. I've been your host, Christine Kiai. Do have a blessed night.